Hello everyone, Brandon Marcello, Jackson Clarion-Ledger here, Humphrey Coliseum. Excuse my voice, I was yelling to Rick Cleveland during the game today. It was so loud. Mississippi State a 73-64 loser to number one Kentucky. A close game in the second half, but a game that State, I want to say blew it, but they just didn't have the horses to run with Kentucky in the second half. Mississippi State built that tremendous 13-point lead at halftime. Jalen still hits that three-pointer. The crowd is going nuts. But Kentucky was able to start that second half on that 10-2 run, and you just kind of knew Kentucky was going to hang in there within a few shots, even if State made another run or two. And that's exactly what happened. State actually, would react. It hits a couple of shots to answer Kentucky, but Kentucky just had the horses, as I said. They had the players. State was hurt by Rodney Hood, who was out the entire second half with a bruised knee. Kentucky had just adjusted. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who Rodney Hood was on for most of the night in the first half, he switched over, Gilchrist did, to guard D. Boss. 5-inch height advantage there. It's very similar to what we saw at the Ole Miss game, in the first Ole Miss game against State, where they had a bigger body against D. Boss than it really got to D, and I think it got to D tonight. He scored 21 points, but 16 of those came in the first half. He only scored 5 points in the second half. Good change up by Kentucky, but Kentucky was on the ropes at halftime. State had the chance to knock them off with a death blow, I thought, to open up the second half, even without Rodney Hood, and they weren't able to do it. Just weren't able to do it. But you look at Kentucky, just a great team. I mean, you know that. You've probably watched it on TV. You've read about them. It's just phenomenal. They've won 19 straight now. They're 27-1, 13-0 in the SEC. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist had 18 points. Anthony Davis had 13 points. But Mississippi State did a really good job of stopping exactly what Rick Stansbury had been talking about all week. Or on Monday, excuse me, not all week. But he had been talking about stopping the lobs, getting them to the basket like over there for these easy dunks. And Kentucky didn't really have that. They had a couple of drives to the basket tonight, but not as many as you thought they would. Anthony Davis, I thought, they held him in check for the most part. He had 13 points, as I said, but Renardo Sidney did a pretty good job defensively on him. Sidney only had 3 points, but I think just his presence kind of changed things a little bit. It was interesting. Kentucky actually doubled Renardo Sidney a couple times when he caught the ball. They knew just how potent he was on offense. But State just really dismantled in the second half. Kentucky had 45 points. Mississippi State had 23. Looking ahead, obviously just a disheartening loss for the Bulldogs. 4th straight loss in the SEC. State reeling. They need a win to stay on the NCAA tournament bubble. I think they probably are reaching that after this loss. I know it's a top-ranked team, but losing 4 straight, especially late in the season, does not look good for the committee. These Bulldogs need a win. They go to Alabama on Saturday. Now the big question is, does this team have what it takes to bounce back emotionally and play with the intensity they played with in the first half and for most of the game tonight, in fact, against Kentucky? They get up for these big opponents, but they haven't been, as we've seen, in the 3 previous losses at Auburn, at LSU, and against Georgia at home. State needs to bounce back in a big way. Alabama is also fighting for NCAA life. A loss at Alabama for Mississippi State would get them 5 straight. It would not look good going into that final week of the season because you don't have any RPI boosters in that final week of the season. You have to play lowly South Carolina, and then you get Arkansas, a team that's obviously not going to make the NCAA tournament, and they're actually fighting for an NIT bid. They're fighting for an NIT bid. So the Bulldogs got to get healed up. They got to get corrected. The big thing, though, and we'll keep you updated on the blog and in the Clarion-Ledger, is will Rodney Hood be available Saturday? He had a bruised knee. He was on crutches in the second half. He was he was emotionally distraught a little bit, not being able to be out there and play, and I think it affected this team quite a bit in the second half. I don't know if it would have been a win for State if he had played, but it's interesting to think about, definitely. But a loss is a loss, as Rick Stansbury said earlier in the week. They don't put, how big the margin was or how small the margin was in the loss or win column. It still mounts up as a loss, but heck of a crowd tonight. They thought they were going to see an upset, and for about 20-25 minutes, it seemed like it. But Kentucky just does what Kentucky does. They step up in the clutch in the final minutes. They have so much talent. I mean, there's players we haven't even mentioned that are on this stat sheet. Terrence Jones had 11 points, but Kentucky had 2 players, Gilchrist and Anthony Davis, who had double-doubles. to just really dominate Mississippi State in that second half. Much more in the Clarion-Ledger on Wednesday and throughout the week, and more on the blog. Thanks for joining me here at the Humphrey Coliseum. Only one more game left here. Arkansas to close out the season. It's going to get dicey, kind of dicey already. Going to be interesting to follow the Bulldogs the rest of the way as they try to get a couple more wins to get in this NCAA tournament.